Okay, so you know how sometimes you hit that buy now button on a huge online order? And it's mostly clothes.
I've been there.
You get that little rush, right? Like, yes, so many cute new things.
It's addictive, especially with those prices.
So true. But what if I told you that the real price tag on that haul is way higher than what you see on your credit card statement?
Yeah, that's something most of us don't think about, the real cost of those purchases.
Exactly. And that's what we're diving into today, fast fashion.
We'll be unpacking a whole bunch of sources, articles, and reports, really digging into what fast fashion is, why it matters, and what we can all do about it.
And hopefully giving everyone listening some things to think about next time they're about to hit add to cart.
Exactly. And get this, I was looking at some stats earlier, and apparently the average American throws away something like 70 pounds of clothes each year.
70 pounds? Seriously? That's wild.
Yeah, it's a crazy amount, right?
That really puts things in perspective.
Definitely makes you think.
Okay, so before we go any further, let's define fast fashion. It's a term we hear everywhere, but what does it actually mean?
Well, think of it like the fast food of the clothing industry.
Okay, I kind of get it.
They're all about churning out tons and tons of trendy clothes, the kind that's in style one minute and gone the next.
So that's why that shirt I thought I'd love forever falls apart after a couple of washes.
Exactly. It's all about speed and keeping up with those ever-changing trends, and unfortunately that means quality and ethics often fall by the wayside.
Which has some pretty major consequences for the environment.
Oh, absolutely. And honestly, the more you learn about it, the scarier it gets.
Like that statistic about fast fashion being responsible for 20% of global clean water pollution?
Yeah, 20%. It's hard to wrap your head around.
That's a bigger impact than I would have thought.
It's huge. And it's all the dyes, the chemicals, the whole manufacturing process, all that waste often ends up polluting rivers and streams.
So we're not just talking about some abstract environmental problem. This directly affects people's lives.
Right. Imagine not even being able to bathe in the water where you live because of the risk of getting sick.
That's awful.
It's the reality for a lot of people, and it's a stark reminder that our fashion choices have very real consequences.
And it's not just the water, right? There's also the issue of greenhouse gas emissions.
Huge issue, yeah.
I read something like 38% of global emissions are from the fashion industry, and projections are saying it could go up by another 30% by 2030.
It's pretty terrifying when you think about it, and it all comes down to carbon emissions.
Right, because every single step in the fast fashion cycle, from manufacturing to shipping, even just getting those clothes to the landfill once we're done with them, it all releases emissions that heat our planet.
Exactly. It's like this giant interconnected web of environmental damage.
And speaking of negative environmental impacts, there's also deforestation.
Yeah, it's not always a direct link, but it's definitely there.
I have to admit, I didn't really connect those dots before diving into all of this.
Makes sense. It's not something that immediately comes to mind when you think about fashion.
Right, but forests are cleared for land to raise cattle for leather, they're cleared to grow cotton, and then there's the whole impact of those carbon emissions we talked about on trees.
It's like this chain reaction, and it all comes back to our clothing choices.
So it seems like we have a lot to be concerned about, but I have to imagine there are some positive things happening, right?
Oh, definitely. Not all doom and gloom.
Like what's happening over in France?
All right, France. They're doing some really interesting things.
Yeah, I was reading about that. They're really stepping up their game when it comes to sustainability.
Absolutely. Like, did you hear about those subsidies they're offering?
Wait, are you talking about how they're actually paying people to get their clothes fixed?
Yeah. Isn't that wild?
That's amazing. Tell me more.
So basically, they're trying to encourage people to hang on to their clothes longer, repair those little rips and tears instead of just tossing things out.
Okay, I love that.
And it's not just about repairs. They're also cracking down on unsustainable practices in the fashion industry.
Really? How so?
Well, some brands are actually facing penalties for producing mountains of clothes designed to fall apart or go out of style quickly.
Wow. Good for them. That's impressive.
It's definitely a step in the right direction, and it shows that they're serious about making a change.
It gives me hope that maybe sustainable style is gaining some real traction.
Me too. And it's not just government action. Some amazing French brands are really leading the way with eco-friendly practices.
Right. I was reading about that too. Like Veja, they make shoes, right?
Exactly. They use all kinds of cool, sustainable materials like wild rubber, organic cotton, even recycled plastic bottles.
That's so cool. And there's another one, 1083, I think.
Yes. 1083, they're super committed to ethical production.
What does that mean exactly?
Well, they prioritize recycled materials whenever they can, and they're really transparent about their whole supply chain.
So you know where your clothes are coming from and how they're made.
Exactly. It's about making more conscious choices.
I love that. It's so inspiring to see these brands find success while also being environmentally conscious.
It proves that style and sustainability can go hand in hand.
It's not an either-or situation.
Exactly. You can care about how you look and care about the planet.
But all this talk about sustainable brands, it makes me wonder, what about the rest of us? What can we actually do to make a difference?
That's the million-dollar question, right? But it doesn't have to be overwhelming.
It's easy to get overwhelmed, especially when you're bombarded with all these messages about what you should be doing.
It is, and it's easy to fall into that trap of thinking, oh, it's just me, what difference can I make?
Exactly. But I think that's where things can get really discouraging.
It's true. But the reality is that every single choice we make, it does have an impact, for better or for worse.
Okay, so let's talk about some of those choices, and more importantly, some practical things we can all do.
Perfect. Where should we start?
Well, we were talking about all the amazing things sustainable brands are doing, but for a lot of people, it's just not realistic to completely overhaul your entire wardrobe overnight.
You're telling me sustainable fashion can be pricey.
Exactly. So what's a good starting point?
Well, one of the simplest but most effective things you can do is just buy less stuff.
Okay, easier said than done, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially with all the sales and those tempting fast fashion deals.
Right, it's like, oh, this is such a steal, I have to get it.
I've been there, but when you actually stop and think about it, how much of what we buy do we actually wear?
Good point. I know I'm guilty of having a closet full of clothes I barely touch.
Right, so before you click add to cart, just take a minute, ask yourself, do I really need this? Will I actually wear this?
Yeah, it's about being more intentional with our purchases.
Exactly. And if you are going to buy something, think about investing in quality pieces that will last longer.
That's where that cost per wear idea comes in, right?
Exactly. Spending a little more on something you'll wear for years ends up being better for your wallet and the planet in the long run.
So true. And I don't know about you, but there's something so satisfying about having those go-to pieces in your wardrobe that you just love and feel good wearing.
Absolutely. It's about curating a wardrobe that reflects your style, not just chasing fleeting trends.
Okay, so that's buying less. What about all the clothes we already own?
Ah, yes. Our existing wardrobes. A treasure trove of possibilities.
Because before we even think about buying anything new, we should probably deal with what we already have, right?
Exactly. And sometimes all it takes is a little creativity to breathe new life into those neglected items hiding in the back of our closets.
Okay, I like where this is going. Tell me more.
Have you ever tried upcycling?
Upcycling. I've heard the term, but I'll be honest, I'm not entirely sure what it is.
So basically, it's taking old clothes or fabrics and turning them into something new and awesome.
Okay, I've seen some really cool upcycled stuff online, but I always assumed it was, like, way too complicated.
You'd be surprised how easy it can be. There are tons of tutorials and resources online. You can literally learn anything these days.
True that. The internet is a magical place.
It is. So let's say you have a bunch of old t-shirts you never wear anymore. You could turn them into reusable shopping bags, headbands, even a patchwork quilt.
See, those are the kinds of projects I need, something relatively simple but still stylish.
Right. And it's a win-win. You're reducing waste and giving your wardrobe a unique touch.
I love it. Okay, so what about the stuff that's not destined for an upcycling project?
Donating is always a great option. Give those clothes a second life and support a good cause.
Right, and then there's always reselling.
It's exactly. Online platforms and consignment shops make it easier than ever to find new homes for your pre-loved items.
That makes me feel better about parting with things, knowing they're going to someone who will actually wear them.
Exactly. And it's a more sustainable alternative to just tossing things in the trash.
Speaking of which, what about the clothes that are, let's say, beyond repair? Is it really that bad to throw them away?
It's not ideal, mostly because a lot of that clothing ends up in landfills.
Right, and then there's that whole statistic we talked about earlier, the 70 pounds of textile waste per person each year.
It's a lot. But here's the good news. Textile recycling is becoming increasingly common.
Wait, hold on. Textile recycling, is that a thing?
Oh, yeah. There are companies out there that collect and break down old textiles. Those worn-out clothes can be transformed into new fibers.
What? That is so cool. I had no idea.
It's pretty amazing. Those fibers can be used for things like insulation, wiping cloths, even new clothing.
Okay, that's incredible. It's amazing to know that even those clothes that seem destined for the landfill can have a second life.
It's a game changer. And it shows how far we've come in terms of finding sustainable solutions.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm feeling a bit more hopeful, but I have to admit, this is a lot to take in. Where do we even start? How do we make sure we're making conscious choices when faced with all the fast fashion temptations out there?
You remember those websites we mentioned that rate brands based on their sustainability?
Oh yeah, it's like a secret weapon against greenwashing. Tell me more. Right. Those websites are amazing.
It's super helpful, right? You can find out so much about a brand's practices, everything from their environmental impact to how they treat their workers.
It's like having a crystal ball for ethical shopping.
Exactly. It empowers us to make more informed choices.
Which is what it's all about, because knowing what to look for is the first step to actually making a change.
Absolutely. And it can be overwhelming at first, but even small changes can make a big difference.
I love that you said that, because it's so easy to get caught up in the idea that we need to do everything perfectly.
It's easy to get stuck in that all-or-nothing mindset.
Exactly. But the reality is, none of us are perfect.
And that's okay. We're all on this journey together.
Exactly. And the important thing is that we're at least trying to make more conscious choices.
Right. It's about progress, not perfection.
Love that. Progress over perfection.
So the next time you're about to click buy on something, take a second. Think about what we've talked about.
Think about those hidden costs, the environmental impact, the people who made the clothes.
And ask yourself, what kind of impact do I want to have?
What kind of world do I want to support with my choices?
It's about more than just following trends.
It's about creating a more sustainable future, one purchase at a time.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
And on that note, I think we've given everyone a lot to think about.
We definitely have, but if there's one takeaway from all of this, it's that our choices matter.
They really do. Every single one.
Let's make sure we're making choices that align with our values.
And that create a more beautiful and sustainable world for all of us.
Couldn't have said it better myself. That's a wrap on fast fashion.